Most constellations, they fade into the background, but not the Pleiades. You've probably seen them. 7 stars clustered tight, perfect, mysterious. As a kid, I used to look up in awe and wonder, what would life be like with 7 suns? And that feeling, that pull towards the Pleiades, it's not just mine, it's ancient. Across continents and cultures for thousands of years, people have looked up at that same little cluster and said the same strange thing. That's where we come from. In Hawaii, their new year doesn't start with fireworks, it starts when the Pleiades return. They have a chant, the Kumu Lipo, 2,000 lines long, not myth, not metaphor, but a retelling of their origins, which, according to the tradition, directly descends from the Pleiades. Half a world away, the Aboriginals tell a story just as old and just as strange. 7 sisters, star women, came here, shaped rivers, carved mountains, and when it was time, they ran, fled into the sky, chased by a hunter from Orion. Same story, different continent. And just when you think it's a coincidence, it happens again. The Hopi of the American Southwest say that their ancestors didn't just survive the last cataclysm, they escaped it, led into underground caves by star beings, Kachinas they call them, who arrived in flying shields and also came from the Pleiades. The Cherokee of Tennessee take it even further. They say they weren't just visited, but they were created. That beings from the Pleiades came here by riding a sound wave to a sacred site, a vortex, a doorway between worlds, and from there, the Cherokee were born. Not to tell the story, but to guard it. These stories, they don't fade, they echo across mountains and oceans and empires that no longer exist. All these cultures saying the same thing. We came from the Pleiades. So here's the question. What happens when in modern times, someone says the same thing? That brings us to Billy Meyer. Billy, a one-armed farmer in Switzerland, lived a simple life in a small remote town until 1975, when a few photos from his private photo collection got leaked. Photos of flying saucers, daylight, crystal clear, shockingly close. And unlike most contactee cases, this wasn't about abduction or trauma. The beings on these craft wanted Billy to take photos. They posed for him. The first meeting happened when he got this sudden, unexplainable urge to grab his camera, hop on his moped, and ride into the forest. He didn't quite know where he was going, but he kept picturing this clearing in his mind that he had never been to. So he followed the vision. And when he finally got to that clearing, the one he kept seeing in his mind, he heard it. A low, metallic hum. So he looked up. And that's when he saw a large disc of polished metal reflecting the sky like a mirror, just floating there. So he set down his tripod. After a few photos, the craft started to come down. 3 legs folded out, and the ship landed in the grass. Moments later, a woman emerged. She looked almost human. Blonde hair, blue eyes, Nordic in appearance. She said her name was Semiyasi, and she came here from the planet Era, orbiting a star called Taygeta, in a system that we know as the Pleiades. She said she'd contacted Billy because her people had chosen him to photograph their ships and to share messages, warnings about nuclear war, a dying environment, and how world governments were concealing the truth, not to protect us, but to weaponize it. She said if we ever wanted to join the others out there, we'd have to outgrow the way we treat each other down here. But before she left, she promised Billy one thing: more visits. And over the next 3 years, she wouldn't just come back once or twice. She came back hundreds of times, sometimes in different craft, sometimes with multiple craft, always posing for Billy and letting him take the best photos possible, as if building him a catalog of the most undeniable proof. Even Bob Lazar, Area 51 whistleblower, said himself on the record that Billy Meyer's photos look almost exactly like the sport model that he was working on.
So originally I had kind of discounted the Billy Meyer stuff, but what caught my eye was one of the craft in there looked amazingly like the one that I worked on, so that kind of makes me believe that that really did occur.
The strange thing about Billy Meyer is that he never intended for these photos to ever see the light of day. They were leaked. In fact, attention was the last thing he wanted, but these visits were happening so often that he simply couldn't hide the secret anymore. People around the town were starting to see these crafts zipping around the skies in broad daylight too. In one of the photos, you can even see a Swiss military jet in the background, apparently taken moments after this Pleiadian saucer ran circles around it. In another short video that Billy took, you can even see a car driving on the road beneath one of these craft. When word got out that Billy Meyer had not only taken photos, but had also been interacting with pilots too, people started to follow him, hoping to catch a glimpse of one of these supposed meetings. And what they found? Landing tracks. Strange spirals pressed into the grass, right where Billy said these ships had touched down. Patterns that still affect how the grass grows to this day. But because Billy didn't want any of the attention, he'd give away his photos to literally anybody who asked. That's when they leaked to the European media, and the storm began. Strangers started showing up to his farm at all times of the day. Some curious, some hostile. People were randomly stealing his photos and original negatives. Even his family got harassed. And it was around this time that Wendell Stevens, retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, heard about the story and saw these photos coming out of Switzerland and decided to pay Billy Meyer a visit himself, since he was already in the US researching contactee cases. It only took one weekend to convince him that Billy Meyer's photos were legit. So he decided to call in the big guns. Two friends of his based out of Phoenix, Arizona, Lee and Britt Elders. They weren't UFO buffs. They were security professionals, experts in corporate espionage and counter-surveillance. They were skeptical. They thought the trip sounded like a waste of time, but Wendell insisted. So they paid Billy a visit thinking they'd debunk the entire thing in just a few days. That's when they saw the photos. So they asked Billy to take them to all the sites where the photos were taken. And that's when they saw the landing marks. They talked to locals who also saw the craft and even went as far as trying to recreate the photos themselves using small models suspended on strings. But no matter what they did, nothing seemed to look quite like the originals. And small models, near impossible to pull off with just one arm, especially the photos with multiple craft. And they even put Billy Meyer under multiple lie detector tests. He passed every one with flying colors. So with Billy's permission, the elders took a handful of the photos back home with them to Phoenix so they could get them analyzed by the best tools available. It was around this time they took a few of the photos to a buddy of theirs, Jimmy Delatoso, who owned a photo analysis lab in Tempe called Village Labs. Now, Village Labs, they had access to computers and software that were years ahead of their time, military grade. So Jimmy digitized the photos, zoomed in, ran enhancements, and what he found stunned him. The ships in these photos weren't overlays. They were baked into the negatives, casting shadows, bouncing light, showing depth. Some parts of the craft were even more in focus than other parts. In other words, no post-processing. These were real objects in 3D space, and too big to be small models on strings. Then, things for Billy took a dark turn. Shortly after Village Labs ran their analysis, two men in black suits showed up to Billy's farm in Switzerland and tried to kidnap his daughter. Billy fired shots, and they fled. Later, a drive-by bullet would miss his head by inches. People wanted this story buried, but it didn't go away. To some, it's the greatest hoax ever pulled. to others, the most important contact case in history. But no matter what you believe, something happened. Something that changed Billy's life forever. Billy didn't ask for any of this, but somehow, it found him anyway. And weirdly enough, that's where my story begins. It all started with one name, Dale Harder. I was watching this old UFO lecture online, one of the final talks given by Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian Minister of Defense, and he was rattling off the types of things that you wouldn't expect a government official to say out loud. A galactic federation, presidents meeting extraterrestrials. But there was something near the end of his speech that made me sit up. Something along the lines of, if you really want to hear something incredible, check out Dale Harder from Honeywell Aerospace. And that hit a nerve. Because my father, who is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, who was also a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, he worked at Honeywell Aerospace for most of my life. I remember sometimes after school, I'd go to his office, and when I'd visit, I'd have to go through layers and layers of securities just to reach him. Now, Honeywell is a big company, but part of me did wonder, could this guy have actually known my dad? Unfortunately, my dad passed a while back. Cancer. I miss my dad. Still do. So I jotted down the name. One idea on the list of growing possible video ideas. Dale Harder, Honeywell Aerospace. And then I forgot about it. A year later, I'm digging through some old notes, fishing for inspiration, and there it was, that name again. This time, out of curiosity, I decided to look him up. For all I knew, this guy wasn't even alive anymore. A few searches later, and I found out that he'd been on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, twice in the last 10 years. Turns out that before Dale worked at Honeywell Aerospace, he was also an engineer for NASA. Now I was really curious. What does this guy know? That's when I found his website. Still operational, but kind of clunky and outdated. I guess Dale builds high-end speaker systems for a living, so still not sure exactly what his involvement with UFOs was. I decided to send him an email. Hey Dale, I would love to interview you for my YouTube channel. My father also used to work for the aerospace division of Honeywell in the 90s, so I'm curious if you might have known him. Short and direct. He replied the same day. Hello Patrick, thank you for the invitation. I think I can make some time to chat with you. Let me know what you have in mind. Kind regards, Dale of Era, Tagetin Pleiadian. I stared at that sign off. I read it twice just to make sure I read it correctly. Dale of Era, Tagetin Pleiadian? Oh no, what did I get myself into? So I stalled, asked him if he could do the interview in person. In his response, he said he was based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and that he would love to do the interview in person, which left me at the ultimate crossroads. Did I really want to go to Ohio to meet this guy who thinks he's a Pleiadian? But on the other hand, he also used to work for NASA, so I kind of just froze. I figured if I don't respond, maybe he'll forget I asked. 4 days later, he emailed me again. Hi Patrick, sorry to bother you, just wondering what's up. Thanks, Dale of Era, Tagetin Pleiadian. Once again, kind of looking for an out still, I asked if he'd be willing to come to Arizona for this in-person interview. And this was his response. Hi Patrick, thanks for the opportunity. I haven't been to Phoenix in decades, would like to come actually. Unfortunately, traveling for me these days is very difficult. My legs are not what they used to be. The best bet for me is you coming here. If you come here and the weather cooperates, I might be able to call in a few UFOs or family ships. Could be interesting. Let's chat. I'll try to give you a call. Best time? Thanks. Dale of Era. Call in a few UFOs? He wasn't joking. And just like that, Dale had my attention. So we hopped on the phone, and much to my surprise, Dale was articulate, thoughtful, not at all how you'd expect a self-declared Pleiadian to sound. He sounded like someone who worked in engineering, and it made me trust him, just enough to get excited about the idea of going to Ohio. So when we hung up the phone, I called my buddy Chris, an aspiring videographer, told him I had a wild idea, and he was in. But just in case we did see something, I made sure to pack one more thing. 2 disposable cameras. Simple, mechanical, very little room for error, you know, just in case. I didn't know what we'd catch, if anything, but I wanted something undeniable. Something that no one could argue with. Real film, no filters, just light hitting plastic. And just like that, we were off to Ohio. And since our hotel was only a mile away from Dale's house, he was essentially our chauffeur for the weekend. So the next morning when he picked us up to go set up the interview at his house, the first thing I noticed, his car was old. The dashboard barely worked. But the way he spoke, calm, measured, as if none of this was strange to him. Chris even noticed a black binder sitting in the back seat. It had a NASA logo on it, the type of folder that you'd expect to see in someone's briefcase. Dale never mentioned it. When we got to his house, I had no idea what to expect. I'd done interviews before. I've even talked to people with some pretty out there claims. But something about Dale, he didn't flinch. And more importantly, he never broke character. Not once. I went in skeptical, but open. Because despite anything this guy says, if he could at some point in this weekend deliver on his UFO promise, I'd be convinced. I wasn't chasing clicks. I wasn't even chasing confirmation. I think I was chasing closure. Maybe about my dad. Maybe about these stories that have been haunting me for years. Either way, we were there. And nothing about what happened next was normal. Dale, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for inviting us out to your home here in Cleveland, Ohio. Looking forward to this conversation because you used to work at Honeywell, but before that, you even worked at NASA, sounds like, huh?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
First of all, thanks very much, Patrick, for having me on your show. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you and tell you about some of the things that I know and do. I worked at NASA from 1980 to 1992. And then after that, I worked 7 years for Honeywell Aerospace.
So you were an engineer at NASA and Honeywell and all that, huh?
Well, I would like to clarify that because a lot of people don't get this exactly right. I am an engineer, but I was not originally hired to be an engineer for NASA. I was actually hired as a technician. And then I moved on into lower level and mid-level management and so forth. I was trained to work on the space shuttle and to fly and all that kind of stuff. So I spent a lot of time moving around back and forth. But mostly I worked out of NASA Glenn and, NASA Lewis, and then it became NASA Glenn. And then after that, went on to Honeywell Aerospace.
Did that lead you into what you do today, which is the lasers, the speakers?
No, actually it didn't. I had all of those technologies under my belt beforehand. I started with lasers at a very early age. I started building all lasers and technology and stuff at the age of 6.
As the camera started rolling, I think Chris got a little excited about seeing UFOs because less than 30 seconds into the interview, he grabbed a camera and started walking around filming the sky.
And that was my first love. And then
which, not gonna lie, was a little distracting. Got it. I'm curious, like, with I just lost my train of thought. Chris, what are you doing?
Just getting in the sky.
Oh,
please watch that cord there, Chris. I'm afraid you're gonna trip on that one sticking out.
so rather than restarting, we decided to just pick up where we left off. But before we started rolling again, Dale said an interesting comment. He said,
Don't be afraid to ask who I am and what I am and all that stuff.
I was thinking I want to lead into
You're gonna
that,
lead into
kind of
it.
start with.
Yeah, no problem.
Dale understood. And subconsciously, I think what I was really trying to do was to get a baseline, a read on him, before we really started going down this Pleiadian rabbit hole. We're going to get into a lot about some of the stuff that you talk about and why I'm even here today. But even leading into that, I was very pleasantly surprised when you told us about how from a very young age, you were building lasers at the age of 5. You won science fairs.
Yeah, I started off very early. Surprised my parents at a very, very young age. I used to run around the house telling them all kinds of things, and they would simply just pat me on the head and go, okay, Dale, that's good. You go play, whatever. They just didn't, they did their best to understand me and to support me, but they didn't really know what I was and what I was talking about. You know, they just knew, boy, this kid is strange, you know. So that's kind of the way it went. But I was about 6 years of age when I built my first ruby laser. I hand ground a ruby, and I took that to a lapidary club. I ground it into a cylinder looking like a cigarette, polished the ends on it and everything, and then I made a flash tube using a vacuum pump and a glass tube and all kinds of crazy stuff and a high power supply. And I built it in a toilet paper tube. I still have it, it still works, and it put out enough energy to pit a razor blade. So what we would call that is a half a Gillette or a half a Joule. And then later on, before I was 9, I built my first gas laser, a helium neon laser. And in both cases, I entered those in school fairs and I won projects with those. I won top level with those. And so I've been hooked on lasers my entire life, just because I love light, and there's something about looking at the beam, not in it, but looking at it from the side, and then watching that thing come out of that laser. It's so mesmerizing.
Off camera, Dale told Chris and I that he was born in 1955, which didn't really stand out to us until later when I looked up when the laser was invented, 1960. Meaning that if Dale built his first ruby laser at the age of 6 using a toilet paper tube, he would have done it just 1 year after the laser itself was invented, which would make him a legitimate child prodigy or a complete liar. But anytime I start to doubt myself or the claims or even why I was out there to begin with, I'd always remind myself that Dale was an engineer for NASA and Honeywell Aerospace. In fact, that's the only reason I heard his name to begin with, making what he told us next that much harder to dismiss.
I'm really curious then. One of the things that a lot of people know you for is, however you want to describe it, because I feel like I wouldn't describe it accurately, but essentially you have a connection to the Pleiadian star system. Do you think that is a cause of some of your interest in lasers, or maybe even intelligence that you were showing as a young kid?
Yes, it is a big part of it, I guess. So to just be blunt about it, I'm visiting Earth, okay? I am what is known as an avatar. I am Tegetan Pleiadian. And so obviously the planet I come from circles the sun, called Tegeta in the Pleiades. Now, when I became an avatar, I was part of a vanguard group, if you will, in the early 50s, to come here and to literally try to help humanity to understand itself, and also to get through some of the toughest times that are to come, just like we're going through now. So I guess the bottom line is, yeah, I'm an ET and I'm here visiting. I am in physical form, in a human form. I was born into a physical body, just like everybody else, so that I could stay here and work. My people, when they're in their present form, they're humanoid looking, they look just like you and I, but their frequency of vibration is very much higher than here. So coming here and trying to stay here in a low frequency vibration environment is detrimental and will kill them or kill us. So I entered into what they call an immersion pod. We then are transferred into a physical human form so that we can stay here for long periods of time. So that's how I came in and why I came in. But when I came, I remember everything from where I came from, who I am, what I am, all the knowledge that I have now, I had then as a baby. The only difference was I had to grow into a lot of those experiences. And so that meant, you know, I would grow into something, or I'd learn something, and I'd go, oh, so that's what that means. And oh, that's what that is. And that's what my life has been. It has been the reassimilation or understanding the wisdom to use that knowledge and information.
So was the birth mother, the actual way that you were born, was that a Tegetan Pleiadian woman?
No, it was not. It was a man and a woman who had a quick relationship, as it were, and they did not stay together or otherwise. And at that particular time frame on this planet, in the early 50s or whatever, it was not really well recognized. It was not a place to be for a young woman to have a child on her own. And so she was basically forced to give me up. And I went through Catholic Charities. They left me on the doorstep, and the rest is history. So that's kind of how that took place.
So then you said when you were sent here, the planning of the parents and everything, was that according to the plan?
Yes, pretty much, yes.
So that
It's all planned out.
you were planned to be taken by the people who you were eventually taken.
Yeah, because we go through rigorous training on board the ship and everything. We have to learn the languages. We have to understand the customs, the culture, the whole 9 yards. Everything is totally different. And I guess for me, the biggest thing, that part of the story is I was trained, I went through all this, I'm ready to go, I'm on the ship. And at the last moment, I changed my mind. I said, no, I don't want to go. And they said, well, you got to go. And they're trying to push me out the door. They're trying to push me out the door. I said, no, I don't want to go. And I finally went, you know, but it was like, that was the biggest moment because I had a change of heart. And then, you know, next thing I know, here I am.
Yeah. So then you obviously had memories, like even leading up to the moment before you came here.
All of it.
At what point did you start remembering them, or did you remember them from the jump?
From the very moment.
Even from like a
From
baby?
the very moment I was born, I had it all up there. The only thing I chose not to remember, basically, when I came through was whether or not I had a wife or children or anything like that. And the reason is because if you remembered that or you had any remorse at leaving them or this, it might interfere with your mission. Okay, so I left those memories basically behind. But the technical knowledge, the general knowledge, the everyday stuff, I came with it all.
Up until this point, I wasn't sure what to believe. I mean, Dale seemed level-headed, sharp, but then he said something I wasn't quite ready for, that he didn't just believe he was connected to the Pleiades, but rather he came here fully aware of who he was, a Pleiadian being with his consciousness being projected down from the mothership, which is where his actual body is, and that he's currently in a human body avatar. At the time, I didn't say much because honestly, I wasn't sure how to respond, but part of me kept wondering, if this was true, what happens when Dale dies?
If you're an avatar, after you die here, does that mean you go back to your life over there?
That wasn't my initial plan. My initial plan was that eventually, when I came here, I would be extracted. I was essentially sent to do a stint of about 40 years. All right, and when my 40th year was up and that time was up or my contract was up, I was basically told, okay, you can come home if you want to, and they would extract me in physical form. But I made a crucial error. And I actually fell in love with the planet. I fell in love with humanity. And I said, well, I'd like to stay and continue to serve, to help any way I can. And they said, okay, you can do that. But they warned me ahead of time that I was going to get extremely sick toward the end. My original plan was to be extracted physically, not to die here. Now, there's been complications with that because there's basically a moratorium, if you will, on Earth that has put all ETs that are visiting here in a very difficult spot. So all the ETs that are here that could have been extracted, that would have been extracted, have been cut off. We've basically been told we're not allowed to be extracted, we're staying here, and those rules were put forth by the Federation. And the Federation simply said, that's it, nobody talks, nobody leaves, nothing. Well, I don't particularly want to die here. As a starseed or as an avatar, in my case, it's unusual because most starseeds do not know to the extent that I do who I am and what I am. But in my case, I came full aware. And I always wanted to go home, and that was our agreement. So now I'm a little perturbed because if I am forced to die here, this being that is Dale will cease to be, and I'll simply wake up in my immersion pod, and I will be who I was before. My name is LL Patah. I've served on board a ship called, many ships, but the last one was the Toleka. And that one was still in orbit. It just left a few weeks ago, actually, but there are 4 other ships in orbit right now.
Why did it leave?
I'm sorry?
Why did it leave?
It actually had to go home. It needed maintenance. It had been here in orbit on and off since 1952.
Is that a instantaneous trip? It's just like...
No, this time when they went home, it took about 3 days.
Okay.
They took very slow time, and they were escorted by another ship called the Vigilant Eagle, which these are dreadnought class ships. And while
Are they physical
they're
craft?
physical craft.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're talking a large craft. These things are, the Teleka's about 1.5 miles long. It's about 77 yards wide. It has 4 main engines that are driven through free energy and crystal Merkabas, which it's hard to explain, but it's a toroidal system. But in any case, yeah, Teleka went home and she needed a lot of maintenance.
And your actual body is on that craft?
Was on that craft, yes.
To what degree does the world governments of Earth cooperate with these ships coming and going? Because you said that one has been in orbit since the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, did the government know about it?
Oh, they know. They don't like it, but they know.
Surprisingly, that wasn't the first time I'd heard a similar story about a mothership in Earth's orbit or a galactic federation working with world governments and concealing the truth from the general public. Former Canadian Minister of Defense Paul Hellyer said similar things about the Galactic Federation, and even Israel's former space chief Haim Eshed said a similar thing and even went as far as to say that Trump himself was briefed on it. And despite everything that Dale had told me about the mothership, about his failed extraction, about the Galactic Federation blocking his return, there was still one lingering question. If you're stuck here, then why'd you come here to begin with?
So what was your mission here?
My mission here. Well, my mission here, actually, and I will tell this in honesty, is that I'm a little disappointed in myself. I came here with the idea that I wanted to be another Nikola Tesla, okay? Tesla was always my hero, and I have a lot of his work, a lot of his original writings, and so I basically fancied myself, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be useful to humanity in a way that I could influence the world, and whether it was medical or technological or with lasers or whatever it was, but I didn't want to just necessarily be an everyday man, okay? I thought if I could come in and technologically or medically change the world for the better, that would be a great way to go, you know? And so I worked toward that goal, but that never happened. And our purpose, my purpose, is to tell people who I am, what I am, why I'm here, why my family's here, why all the other ETs are here, and there are hundreds of races that visit this place, and there's probably about 82 that are here at this moment.
So this is like going off to college for a couple of years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So, you know, the whole point of it is that like I said, I was going to go home. Now that I am fully, I'm fully conscious, I'm fully aware, I'm sentient, I know who and what I am, I don't feel right about having to die here and not continuing as who I am. I like who I am.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can say I like me. I want to continue as me, and well, if Alel wakes up over there, that's okay, there'll be 2 of us. And that's like being twins.
Would you retain your memories?
Well, I would if I stay alive, but if I don't, then he's going to wake up and basically he's going to go, oh, thanks for the vacation, thanks for the memories, see you around.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back that way. I want to continue as who I am now. So this is the thing that upsets me now, because the Federation has stepped in and said, oh, nobody's going to be extracted, you're all going to have to die here, that's that, you know. And I'm going, what? That wasn't my agreement. But there were other complications that got involved in that.
And according
too.
to them, once you die here, you're just back there anyways.
That's it, you're gone. So, you know, yeah, I said, no, I'm not going to let that happen. I said, you can't. I said, you know, we made an agreement, and now you're going to let me just rot away or die here?
After hearing about Dale's mission for being here, but also all the ways that he feels like he'd fallen short, I still had so many questions.
Just because I know what I'm going to ask you when we get inside, I feel like this would be a great transition to get inside.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is around the time when the rain started to come down.
And I also felt a couple raindrops.
So everything that we had just set up, the lights, the tripods, the 3 cameras, had to all be packed up and reassembled back in Dale's living room so we could continue this conversation.
Yes, Mother Earth is coming down.
But in the back of my head, I kept remembering those key words in Dale's original email: if weather cooperates. It felt like the sky was closing in on us. Like the entire reason we came out here might be slipping away. So I figured once we got inside, if this really was our last shot, I needed to dig deeper.
As far as Pleiadians go, people who talk about them, you always see illustrations and depictions. I've heard that they look like light beings. I've heard that they look like human beings. What do Pleiadians look like?
Well, this is a subject that really aggravates the daylights out of me. And people look at me and say, how the hell could you be an ET or Pleiadian? You're overweight, you're big, you're this or that, your body's failing, the whole thing. You're certainly not an ET. Okay, I understand, because their mind plays tricks on them. And they have a hard time accepting any other information. Pleiadians, my race, my group, the Tegetans, we all look like human beings. We're taller, like you are, and even taller. Some are, average size is 7.5 feet. All right. What really aggravates me is that everybody talks to me and they go, oh, I've talked to a lot of Pleiadians. I've talked to this one and they told me this, and I talked to that Pleiadian and they told me that. I said, I don't think so. First of all, we don't channel. Well, we did that eons ago, but we found channeling to be unreliable. And the reason is because even though channelers may do it with an open heart, open mind, they're trying their best to help, and some do. But many of them, the problem that we ran into is that they want to, and they tend to put their own flavor, their own spin on the information that they're getting. And so it doesn't always come through accurately. All right. When it comes down to recognizing Pleiadians, that we can walk amongst humans at any time, whether they're an avatar like I am, and that's unremarkable, or they can walk amongst humans as themselves, and all they would do is they appear to be taller, they always appear charming, they're attractive, men and women, neither in any case. But we are certainly not the long-haired, goody two-shoes,
Blonde hair,
beings,
blue eye.
white skin, and all this stuff that everybody's made to these
so
remarks.
like the Nordics, so they're not.
We're
like
not Nordics.
Okay.
We're not related to the Nordics.
Are the
Nordics
Nordics real? Are they an actual
Well,
thing?
that's a name that they've given to them. It's a different group, but it's not us.
Got it.
All right. But in any case, it aggravates the daylights out of me because so many people tend to look at all these ETs and that's, oh, we're talking to the Pleiadians, we're talking to the Vegans, we're talking to this one, we're talking to that one. Well, I can tell you that there aren't that many people talking to anybody. And I certainly know if they're talking to one of my group because there's only 2 of us on the planet. And my other partner or cohort is a woman who's in Finland.
When Dale told me that there was only one other avatar on planet Earth that was just like him, I didn't quite know what to make of that, because how could I verify that? And if true, would that be potential evidence of his claims being true? But I can tell you that after I looked it up later on down the road, this is where things got a little weird.
Hello everybody, good day to everybody watching us all over the world.
Her name is Goja, a woman living in Finland. She runs a YouTube channel called Cosmic Agency, where she posts excruciatingly detailed updates which supposedly come direct from their queen on the Pleiadian mothership orbiting Earth. A sentence I can't even say out loud without questioning my own sanity. And yet her channel has over 100,000 subscribers, and each video she posts gets a surprising amount of engagement. Thousands of people in the comments treating these transmissions not like fiction, but like fact. Then I found a video buried deep in her uploads. It was a vlog of her coming to the US to meet Dale Harder for the first time ever.
The conference begins on Saturday. Dale is coming Saturday night.
She wasn't just excited, she was radiant.
Dale is coming. Dale is coming. I just called from the front desk. He's coming.
Not like someone meeting a guru or a crush, but like a sibling reuniting with a long-lost family member.
Hey!
You,
I made it.
I'm making a video.
Hi!
Hello!
According to Dale, the two of them talked almost daily when they first connected because she was essentially his direct line of communication to the mothership. And through that connection, Dale says that he finally had confirmation. Everything he'd sensed inside since childhood, it was finally confirmed as real.
And through her efforts and being in contact with the crew and with Swaru. They actually at some point held a Tegetan Council meeting and decided to bring me into this and literally confirm for me who I am and what I am. So everything that I have known and felt my entire life was then given to me. And I got to tell you, that was probably the most unbelievable experience of my life.
And craziest of all, both Goja and Dale still believe and stand by the fact that they are the only two Tegetan Pleiadian avatars on Earth right now. So naturally I had to ask, why only two?
You said there's only two Pleiadians like you here on Earth, right?
To my knowledge, yes. Now, there may be a third now.
What is the purpose of the Pleiadians having any interest in being either on Earth or in orbit? Because just like from the outside looking in, why only have 2 or 3 avatars?
We found that too many gets in the way. There are certain times and instances when my people will come down off the ship. They will adjust, they'll wear a frequency belt, or they'll have a method where they can live here on Earth. Their purpose is to monitor, to watch over, and to help. Okay, so you're given all this information, and every minute of every day we are thwarted with what? Nuclear war. Oh, Putin's going to do this, and so is going to do that. It is to keep humanity inundated with this stuff so that they can't wake up or think about what we're talking about right now. So I'm here to tell people what I know, what they know, and spread the information that you're not what you think you're not. You're being duped, you're being controlled. Wake up, you know?
I guess my reason for asking that is because even if we were being duped, why would a civilization 400 light years away care?
My family, being very humanoid looking, you have, and everyone here has some of our Pleiadian genes, some of our genetics. We are like kin.
Why is that?
Well, that's because there was intermixing of the Pleiadian genes and so forth. There's been a lot of experimentation, if you will, upon Homo sapien, but that's one reason why you cannot find a missing link between monkeys and humans. You know, there is no missing link. It's not on the planet to find. But what it really comes down to, humans here are raised to believe they're separate from everything, and they're not. They're just as connected as they ever could possibly be, and way beyond what they imagine.
Yeah.
All right? So until we adopt an understanding of one another and a cessation of everything being militaristic and warlike, and start putting our energies toward health and happiness and helping one another as a race, and I mean a world race, this stuff is not going to change.
So are you saying the Pleiadians helped create humans by genetic manipulation?
Yes.
Was that cooperation with any other ETs, or was that solely the Pleiadians?
There supposedly is about a dozen different genetics in humanity.
Okay.
That means there's about a dozen races that have interfered with or worked together with over all the years.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that is partly why humanity still remains animalistic, if you will.
Is that the primary reason why the Pleiadians are interested in Earth? Going back to the original question.
Not the primary reason. Their reason is because they want to help humans to evolve, to outgrow this stage, to realize their potential as a species. And once we learn to love and care and respect one another, we then have the right to go into space. But before that time, humans are just not ready. If you can't love and respect one another, and all you do is fuss and fight every minute of every day, and people are at war, and they've been at war for hundreds of years, they don't even know why they're fighting anymore, until you eradicate all of that and realize that a human life is the most valuable thing on the planet, you don't really have the right, or should you, venture into space, because the first thing you're going to do is try and conquer other worlds and turn people into slaves, because that animalistic mentality has not been dealt with.
Dale's claims weren't just strange, they were unsettling. Because if even a fraction of what he was saying was true, it would mean that everything we know about human history is all just a lie. But what stuck with me most is that at this point, we still had no evidence of anything. We really just had his word and his credibility to rely on. So I decided to shift gears, and I asked him about the Galactic Federation because he had just gotten done telling me that they were partially responsible for keeping humanity in the dark about the truth of life in space.
When it comes to the idea of the Federation, they're always portrayed as the good guys. I can tell you that the Federation is not necessarily the good guys. They are a great deal responsible for the conditions here on Earth right now. They're controlling it. They are the ones responsible for not allowing humanity to know the truth of everything, okay? It's not the ETs.
Yeah.
And so my family, the Teget Pleiadians and all the others, the Irma and 100 other races, they are all part of the Federation, but we don't necessarily follow or like all the Federation rules. And that's where we are right now. My family's fighting with the Federation on a daily basis. We're sick and tired of watching them control the situations on Earth and making people into monkeys. Okay, we want people to know the truth. And given the truth, we believe that people would choose the right thing and not the wrong thing. But again, they still come back to, we want proof, we want proof. And everybody wants to see the spaceship. Everybody wants to shake hands with the ET and the whole thing. I said, you don't know proof if it hits you in the face.
Yeah.
I'm sitting right here. I am what I am.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, we want proof. You're just spoofing us. You're full of baloney. You're deluded, you know.
So there's a couple questions I have based on that. When you first got connected with your sister, who you said is in what country?
Oh, you mean my partner?
Yeah.
Gosha's in Finland right now.
Okay, so let's say you met another person who claimed to be Pleiadian. I'm assuming there's some checklist in your head that you're going to go through to try to verify if they're being truthful or not.
Obviously, yeah.
And I think this is why it's interesting, because along the lines of proof, to the general person talking to you, they would go, where's the proof? To you talking to someone else who is Pleiadian, what proof would you look for?
It's not a matter of proof so much like, oh, here's my credentials. It's more a connection on an inner level, an inner knowing, if you will. There's a psychic connection, there's a telepathic connection, there's things like that that I would probably know and feel. I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, you know, and so do they for that matter.
At this point, Dale was right. He didn't show us documents, he wasn't showing us photos. All we had was himself and his very unique story. But after everything he told us, I knew I couldn't leave without at least trying for more. Our time with him was winding down, the rain clouds hadn't completely cleared up yet, and there was still one thing we hadn't tried yet. So I changed the subject. I asked if these craft are really out there, could we tell that it was a Pleiadian craft by the shape alone? Because with the Skywatch coming up, if the answer was yes, then maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for us later that night.
If I were to see a UFO, could I point out by the shape that it's Pleiadian? Like, or do they have saucers?
Yeah,
do they
you
have
could.
triangles?
You used to be able to. I mean, back in the days when we were contacting Billy Meyer, we used to have the classic saucer shape.
So that was all legit, the Billy Meyer stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely real when it happened. But they messed with it so much that they turned it into a non-real thing. And the FBI got a hold of it and various three-letter agencies, and they even got to his wife and everything. And then Billy Horn, who is the so-called representative of him in this country, they don't tell the truth about the whole thing. Not what we did, not what we showed them. My family actually shared information with them, gave them parts of ships, gave them sounds, gave them tapes, gave them pictures out the kazoo. And he ended up giving us stuff all away, you know, because, again, he just wanted people to know. But they turned it into a big joke. So that experiment went bust for us.
Why is it that people think of Billy Meyer as like a hoax?
Yeah.
So why is that?
That's been turned into a hoax. You know, you can take almost anything and turn it into a hoax.
What is it that most people would point out as being the hoax of it? Like, I don't know much about the story.
Well, here's Billy Meyer, who's got one arm.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
He's a one-armed paper hanger in a windstorm, and he's taking all these fabulous photographs of these spacecraft that are coming to the house, different sizes, different shapes, everything. And
they're all Pleiadian.
And again, they're all Pleiadian. That was our group that contacted him. And, you know, so He put out the information exactly as we gave it to him. And then, of course, there were other people that had to get involved. And they started stealing pictures. They started taking everything that he had. And pretty soon, they came along and they decided to create what they called the Semjase Star Center. And you got to pay so much money to become a member and to see the Meyer information. And they turned him into a prophet or a god, if you will. And the whole thing just fell apart. It became nonsense. And that's where it is today.
Did he pass away?
No, he's not dead that I know of, no.
Billy Meyer?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's still alive. I used to be in contact with him.
Got it. So he, I guess, claims that he had met Pleiadians and went on their ships and took pictures of the ships.
Yep.
And all those photographs, at least when I see them, I go, wow, that's like a really hard photo. Like they look real. Like someone who's in video production.
They absolutely do. And that was back in the time when you didn't have the luxury of digital cameras, where you couldn't slap things together and overlay them and do all this stuff with Photoshop and everything. That was in a time when it was a camera with a roll of film in it and you snapped the pictures.
Which, by the way, we're going to hope to do at some point this weekend if the weather is nice.
We can certainly try.
And we got the fancy, the non-fancy cameras, the ones that are not electrical, just in case.
Yeah, well, even those, they shouldn't have any trouble. People capture the ships on their phone all the time.
All right. We're here until tomorrow. We're leaving tomorrow. If weather permits, we've been told potentially maybe we might be able to call upon a craft to show itself.
Yep.
By the time we finished the interview, we had over 3 hours of recorded conversation. And while Dale himself was convincing, we still had no actual proof of anything yet. So I grabbed my disposable camera, just in case, and Chris grabbed the one handheld camera that still had some battery left. Dale then set up some lawn chairs on the side of his house, his usual spot, and he initiated the start of the Skywatch. This was the moment we came for.
I'm going to call to my brothers and sisters as I generally would. Usually I do this quietly.
The way he started it, he had this very specific prayer, for lack of a better term.
My brothers and sisters, it is I, Dale, Teget and Pleiadian. I'm stationed here on Earth, as you know. I'm calling out to you again tonight with some friends, asking you to please make an appearance.
Where he essentially called out to any nearby ET races and asked them to pay us a visit.
I'd like to call those races that I do know that are good-natured. So I'll start by calling the Yael, the Sasani, the Arcturian, the Syrian, the Vegan, the Andromedan, the Engan, and the Luavian, the Lyrian, the Lemurian, Atlantean, the Garthan, and to Kari of Inner Earth. We await your arrival. Please come and talk to us if you can.
And then we waited. After the first hour or so, nothing was quite out of the ordinary.
Seeing anything, Chris?
Nothing yet. Maybe the camera saw something I didn't see.
Except for the fact that Dale seemed to really start opening up to us, even more than he was in the interview. One of the first stories that really caught my attention was when I asked him if he's ever had any bad ETs visit him while doing this protocol.
Someone was telling me about this, that they had heard people were practicing what Stephen Greer was teaching them.
Yeah.
And unintentionally invited negative entities.
And they can do that too, and I have done it myself. My very first abduction was a negative entity, and I regret that every single day. But I was too young and too stupid to know what I was asking for, and they took advantage of that.
What happened?
I was abducted by a negative race. I was forced to mate with another woman who came from California to find me. I never met her before, never knew her. And she showed up, took me to a place in a park way away from everything. And sure as hell a ship came, and we were both taken aboard, and a baby resulted from what happened.
So you're saying you have a child out there somewhere?
Somewhere.
You think it's on planet?
No, I doubt it.
And that all happened within a span of
That happened
human.
on the summer solstice of 1986. I
Wow.
was in Cuyahoga Valley Park.
And just when I thought that story was weird, the next one stopped me cold.
So every now and then you come out here and sit at night and just watch the stuff?
I'm out here any night that's clear enough to do it.
Huh.
And I keep reports of all of my sightings. the day, the time, the climate, the
Do you have like a log book?
Oh, absolutely.
That's cool.
I keep better logs than,
Can we see it?
well, I have to go and dig some of it up.
Maybe tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll see what I can do.
And that one simple question about keeping a log led Dale into a rant about why he strongly dislikes MUFON.
But I try to keep my sightings as clear and accurate as anything I would do for MUFON.
Huh.
MUFON I can't stand to begin with.
Why is that?
Bunch of assholes.
Yeah?
Apparently, a few years ago, Dale had tried to report a strange encounter he had, an encounter that came with physical evidence, and MUFON didn't take him seriously.
I had one abduction experience where they cut a triangle into my leg, and I took an implant out of my leg, and I have that in a bottle with a little bit of blood water in it.
The implant?
To keep it. I actually put the implant in there dry, and it had little wires and things on it. I can show you pictures of it in my cell phone. And after it dried, they all curled up and went away, and I put it in the bottle. And then I thought, what if I put a little bit of blood in there with a little bit of water? So when I cut myself, I put a drop of blood in it. And the damn thing sprung right back.
What?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Do you have that?
I have it on my phone.
And as he's telling us this story, he takes out this old Android phone that had to have been at least a decade old, and he starts swiping through these pictures that he clearly took on this phone.
It never bled and it never hurt.
Did you see the picture of the
I didn't see the
I
implant.
woke up in the morning, I had been asleep for 3 hours and 49 minutes, and I never slept well.
The picture started with the triangle-shaped hole punch wound on his leg.
Chris, come around this side and look at the implant with the wires on it.
Let's see, what
And
is
you can see the triangle, and it's perfect. I measured it with a micrometer. It's exactly the same length on either leg. It's a perfect right triangle.
And then he got to microscopic images of this metal that was embedded into it.
Now the implant,
what the?
there's little wires like hanging off here and here and here. There's some on the other side.
What the heck?
It had weird red crystals and even tiny microscopic wires coming out of it.
Yeah.
And then that's the blood that you fed it?
No, it's not blood. It's just a red part of the crystal. Now after this thing and these wires and stuff, after it dried up and shrunk, when I put the water and the blood back in there, the whole thing came just like that, came right back.
And while he's telling us this, I could hardly believe what I was experiencing, because in our interview earlier that day, he kept mentioning multiple times this idea of not having any proof, despite the fact that people always want to see proof.
Give me proof, give me proof. If I give you the proof, who are you gonna tell? Nobody's gonna listen.
And yet here we were at 1 a.m. and he's dropping the biggest bombs on us that he has all weekend. I mean, he had well over a dozen photos from multiple angles of his leg and of this thing. So I took a shot in the dark.
You talk about like proof, but I'm telling you, a logbook and
An implant that reacts.
proof.
So I pleaded with him and asked him if he could please pick us up early the next morning so we could come over and get some last second footage of this supposed implant.
You don't have it with you? The
I have it
implant?
right now in my pocket, yeah.
No, I mean the implant.
Oh, that's
In your house?
I have it in the house.
Tomorrow, when we come over, can we see some of this stuff, like the logbook, the implant?
Yeah.
Super nonchalant about it. So somewhere around 3 a.m., we called it a night. That way Chris and I could get back to the hotel room and recharge these camera batteries before the next morning.
Pleiades. Show me light. Pleiades. Come out. Show me the light.
And the next day, Dale picked us up bright and early at 10 a.m. and he took us back to his house. And sure enough, just like his story, there was the vial.
And this is the implant.
Oh, wow.
And inside of it, a tiny piece of metal.
So walk us through the story of this implant.
Okay, that's a pretty good shot of it there.
Pretty good.
It's like a crystalline structure. This portion right here with this point was sticking out of my leg and kept poking me, and that's the reason I dug it out.
Uh-huh. Tell us about the mark, the triangular mark on your leg.
Here's a good picture.
Tell us about how you noticed that. Okay, so this was the mark on your leg, right?
That's the triangle, yeah.
And it's a perfect like stamp mark.
It's a 1/4 inch on each side, and then the hypotenuse is a little longer, but it's a perfect right triangle. I measured it with a micrometer to 1/1000 of an inch, and it's dead nuts on. It's an 1/8 of an inch deep. It never bled and it never hurt. I woke up after a long sleep. For me, 3 hours and 49 minutes, I was dead to the world. I had no recollection of anything, and I was foggy-brained, and I looked down at my leg, and that's what I found. And I called my wife, and she said, "What is this?" And she looked at it, and she said, "What the hell is that?" You know, so that's how it started. I knew something had happened.
You have another photo of that?
Let's see, yeah.
That one's a little blurry.
All right, let's see if that one's any better.
Try another one. Let's see. I think I saw a couple more this way. That one, I think you can definitely make out in that photo, just the sharp edges of the triangle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with an 1/8 of an inch deep, at least, it never bled or anything. It's slightly red around it, but that was about it.
So this was taken when you first noticed it?
When I first noticed it.
And what happened was, you said you don't sleep very long at night, and this particular night, you just realized when you woke up that you somehow slept in way past you normally do.
3 hours and 49 minutes, I was gone. Yeah.
And so you woke up and did you feel it, or did you just see it?
No, I was kind of groggy, and I looked down. I was sitting here like this. I looked down, and I saw this thing on my leg. I thought something was on my leg, and I went like this, and it turned out to be this damn thing. So I pulled out the phone and camera and everything, and I took pictures of it as quickly as I could. And then, like I said, within 2 weeks, that thing had developed that point that was sticking out of the center. And I took a scalpel and I dug in there and I pulled that implant out. We immediately took that to my one friend who has the medical equipment, and we went and used the microscope from University Hospital. And that's how these pictures were taken, through the microscope. Anyway, that's how that all came about.
And then just go back to the picture of the implant and talk about the wires that you noticed. And then first off, before you tell us about the wires for the camera, tell us about how you got the implant out.
Oh, well, just a scalpel.
Yeah.
I just took a scalpel and dug into the implant and popped this thing out.
And you noticed it was in there how?
This point right here was sticking up, and every time I would touch my leg, it would poke me. It was like it would rise up and poke me, and I thought, what the heck is going on? And then, so I literally dug in there and pulled that thing out with a pair of tweezers after I cut it open.
Huh. And tell us about the wires.
You see in this little corner over there to the right, the right and more to the middle, that there's little hairy things like sticking off of it. They're like a wire. I can't be certain they're a wire, but I've never seen anything like them. And there's a better look of the wires there.
And these were taken on a medical microscope.
This is a medical microscope, yeah. This is one of the good ones they use at like University Hospital.
And what did you notice about the wires when you first took it out? Like that interesting observation about it?
Nothing really. You couldn't hardly even see them. I knew there was something there, but we didn't really realize to what extent until we put them under the microscope, and then the camera on the microscope revealed, there they are, pretty much evenly more revealed.
Well, you told us a story about the blood. Well,
yeah.
Why was that significant?
I put the thing in here. Okay, and within a day it just completely folded up, dried up, and turned into a little white speck. And then I got to thinking later on, I said, well, if this thing is keyed to my body for any reason, maybe it would react to a drop of my blood. Then after I hurt my finger or pulled a hangnail off or something and a little bit of blood came out, I took that blood and I put it in distilled water in that medical vial with it, and the thing went and reopened and came back to
only when you put your drop of blood
only
in
after
here.
I put the blood in. It wouldn't react to water.
And do you think that would happen with anybody's blood or just yours?
Just mine. I think it's keyed to me only, but that's just my supposition, my idea, my belief.
That's wild. Thank you for sharing that. So then what are these right here?
These are some of the UFO reports. I jot them down like that real quick when I have a little sighting, and then I put them all into a log form later on. And I made a log based on reports used by MUFON and NASA and various things like that.
And these two papers, they're obviously not like everything that you've
Not
logged.
every detail, no.
Do you usually keep different records in a bigger logbook, or?
Yeah, once I get where I feel like typing them in. For example, here's how to read it to you. This is Monday morning, Sunday. So typically I go out between 2 and 4 in the morning. That's when I do my best talking, best seeing. This was 5/19 of 24. I was out at 2:30 a.m. The first sighting was in the east, south, southeast, approximately 25-degree elevation. Time was 2:36 to 2:37 a.m. One long flash, approximately 7 seconds, the ship lit up very bright, then slowly dimmed, and then left. No answer to laser. The second sighting was at 2:47 a.m. northeast at approximately 40-degree elevation. Another long flash as above, moved to the north-northeast again, an approximate 5 to 7 second duration of very high brightness. And sighting number 3, sighting at 3:12 a.m. northeast at 45 degrees and perhaps 50-degree elevation. I was saying goodnight. At the time, I said thank you for all the contacts. Then one extremely bright flash came in from the north-northeast like a camera flash. I felt a tinge or a tingle throughout my entire body. It was as if I could feel the heat from the flash. I was filled with love and hope. Said goodnight for the evening. So those are typical notes or sightings like that. I have hundreds and hundreds of those kind of things.
So if you want to say that one more time, so we can have.
I just wanted to record for the course that this particular abduction that we're examining, the implant and everything, was not one that I had sanctioned or one that I had permitted. This was done against my will. So it certainly wasn't our Pleiadian group or anything that we know. It was later confirmed by my sister Swaru that they felt that this was done by the Gardeners, which is a race that's very similar to what they show as an E.T. in the movie E.T. The Gardeners basically look after star seeds, they look after plants, animals, things like that. And so it wasn't malicious, but it certainly wasn't anything that I necessarily asked for.
Around this time, Chris had spotted something sitting on Dale's table, a black NASA folder.
Chris, did you say he was looking at the NASA folder when we...
This one.
Right there.
It was the same one he had seen in Dale's back seat a couple days before.
Yeah, that was my 50-year anniversary folder.
Inside were a few glossy photos of equipment that Dale had worked on over the years, lasers, speakers, telescopes. But what really caught our attention was a piece of paper that was tucked into the side pocket.
This is not for publication or anything, so I appreciate if you don't record it. But
Got it.
For the hell of it, I was going to show you. This is just off my head a list of people that I know and have worked with throughout the years.
It was a list, a long one. Names, contacts, people that Dale claims to have worked with in the UFO community over the last few decades.
You met Warner von Braun?
Yep, twice.
Do you recognize a lot
I
of these
recognize
names?
a lot of those names, yeah.
He specifically didn't want us filming the list, but a few names he did point out himself.
Some of the coolest guys that ever were Paul Hellyer, you know, the defense minister for Canada, who had his own personal experiences with the ETs, and they asked him not to reveal too much, but he was allowed to tell. Where is he? What is it? Haim Eshed.
Oh yeah, the guy from Israel.
Yes, he is one of the coolest guys.
You met him?
I've talked to him.
That's when it clicked, because if you remember, the first time I ever even heard Dale Harder's name was in one of the last speeches given by Paul Hellyer, the former Minister of Defense for Canada, who openly spoke about an intergalactic federation before he passed a few years back. That single name and that single speech is what started this entire journey. And here I was, in Ohio, staring at Paul Hellyer's name on Dale Harder's list of contacts. It was no longer just a list, it was a thread, tying this whole thing together. After grabbing footage of this implant in Dale's living room, we had some time before our flight, so we went and hung out on the side of Dale's house where we had done the Skywatch the night before. And since we had some time, I had Dale walk us through his entire protocol using consciousness to call in ships.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you first how to call a ship. how to start your own communications.
where he taught us not only what he says, but also gave some tips on how to make it work and how to keep regressive ETs from showing up.
Do not ever leave yourself open to calling in craft that might be regressive in nature and might be something that you don't want to mess with. There are just as many bad guys as good guys.
The full video of him teaching that I'm gonna throw up on Patreon, which you can find at soweird.com or the link in the description. Then almost casually, Dale circled back to one of the stories from the night before. The story he told about what happened when the bad ETs visited him.
You often have to be very careful what you ask for because you might get it. There are regressive ETs out there who will very happily take advantage of the situation and abduct you against your will and perform experiments and things that are not very enjoyable. All right, so you've got to be very careful with what you ask for and what you say. But at this particular time in 1986, there's a little bit of backstory to this. I used to go to a woman's home in Cuyahoga Falls. We used to meet at this lady's house every Friday night, and people would drive from even as far as 100 miles away. We'd all come and we'd bring a potluck dish, and then we would have various storytelling, certain spiritual exercises. So one night I went to this house, and a new person had arrived that I'd never seen before. And she was a very attractive blonde. After about an hour of sitting there, this person approached me, and she said, "Your name is Dale, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I know you." She said, "I live in California." She flew in just for the meeting, just to find me. Now, I'd never met her. I didn't know her in any way, shape, or form, and I'd never seen her before. She said, "I have come just for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You've been asking to have an experience and to see the ships. And you also have been asking actually to leave this planet." Well, at that time, I was going through some difficult personal things, and I basically said, "I want to get off this mud ball, okay?" And she said, "Fine, I've come for you, and we're going to go to a ship tonight." So she took me from the meeting, and we drove for a while and went to a park. It was a Cuyahoga Valley Park, and this was the summer solstice. We went to this park. It was closed. It was well after hours. Park, I believe, closed at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and the gates and everything. And we parked in front of the gate entrance, and we went into the walk path. And as we walked further and further into the park, there was all these normal sounds of the night, the animals, the frogs croaking, the crickets cricketing, and all the different things like that. And we got to a certain spot, and she said, "Wait." And we stood there, and all of a sudden, everything got dead quiet. There wasn't a sound. And then we started to feel very strange. My skin started to tingle, and then there was like a light wind that came in. And I knew something was going on, and there was a craft that came and landed. Well, this craft wasn't visible to look at it, but when it opened the door or whatever, you could certainly see that. We were led by a couple of short beings, like rays, into this craft. And after we went into the craft, she acted as if she knew them. And I was like, oh my God, I'm pretty much kind of freaked on this. And I'm thinking, what in the world did I get myself into? Who is this person? So after some time, we apparently had an experience in this craft. And I didn't really know what had happened. And as the whole thing unfolded, we came out of the craft and we left. And it was like being in a dream and not remembering what the dream was when you woke up. When we got done with that, she told me that we had come together and were chosen to create a child, and that the child would be born and it would go back with them for whatever purpose. And I just about flipped out. I said, "What?" I said, "I just met you. What?" All this stuff, and I was really blown away. Well, she left. I didn't see her again after that. She went to California. Some months later, she contacted me, and she said, "I want to tell you that I'm pregnant and that we have a child." and she said they're going to come and take it within the next month or so, and contacted me again after that and showed me a picture of this child that was born, and they left, and that was the last I heard of it. Well, that was the freakiest thing I think I ever went through. And I said, I'll be damned. I said, from now on, I'm going to be absolutely certain who I tell and what I say and what I ask for, because you can get something you don't expect.
Truth be told, I've been sitting on this story for months. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to tell it, because at first glance, a lot of what Dale says seems out there. A galactic federation, interstellar lineages, craft that respond to human intention. If the most you know about UFOs is Roswell or Area 51, it's a hard pill to swallow. But after hours of conversation, it never once felt like Dale was trying to convince me of anything. He wasn't trying to sell us on his story. He wasn't preaching. He was just stating his truth. Which brings me to these photos. You see, even though this is episode 2 in this so weird investigation series that I'm doing, the Ohio trip was actually the first video we filmed before the Phoenix Lightstock, which was episode 1. And we used those 2 disposable cameras I got to take about 50 photos all across the state of Arizona over the next 4 to 5 investigations that we did, visiting places like Superstition Mountain and even Skinwalker territory in Navajo Nation. But when I finally got the photos developed, only 19 were returned to me, meaning that 31 out of the 50 photos, gone.
It could be a bad roll of film, it could have been a bad camera. You didn't take them through an airport or anything like that, did you?
But that explanation they gave me didn't make sense, because when I took the 19 photos they returned back to me and I laid them out chronologically, it was very clear to me that between 2 independent disposable cameras, it wasn't a random assortment of missing photos. There was a specific chunk of time missing.
That's the weird thing is, I think between both cameras there should have been 50 photos. 29 of them were not returned. But the weird part of that issue is if it was something like an airport or radiation or a magnet, you would think it would kind of affect different parts of the entire film reel. The weird part,
sometimes it don't. I mean,
well, what was interesting to me is that if we look at it on a timeline where both cameras are being used, there's like a chunk of time that's missing between both cameras, the photos taken in that chunk of time.
Almost as if it was selectively picked up and removed from what was returned to me.
Okay, yeah.
What kind of issue could cause that?
That now I don't know.
So I had them send me back the negatives.
The only thing I'm worried about is, have they been destroyed yet or not?
No.
Okay, so they still can be shipped back. You just have to contact them.
Still weird, yeah.
I actually didn't think they'd send them to me, but after about 6 weeks, they finally arrived. And when I looked at these negatives, sure enough, on the negatives, all the missing photos, completely blank. And only 3 photos that we took in Ohio survived. 2 of them are when me and Dale were sitting on the side of his house the afternoon before we left. And the other one is the photo I took of the blank night sky the night before.
Hanging off here and here and here. There's some on the other side.
Except for in that photo, the sky, it wasn't blank. Here it is. Even at a glance, it's hard to miss this blurry white something in the sky. A bright, undeniable anomaly in this photo that I promise you was not there when I snapped that photo. So I truly don't know what to make of it. But not a single photo that we took of the implant survived. Not one. So why only those 3 photos? Was it something about the object in that sky photo? Or was it the implant? Or was it something we brought back with us? Because in the very next episode, something happened. The single most terrifying paranormal experience of my life.
There's something out there.
It happened in the Arizona desert at Superstition Mountain in the dead of night, and we caught the entire thing on camera.
What the? Grab the lantern.
So if you're not subscribed already, now's the time. And in the meantime, if you want to go even deeper down this rabbit hole, you can watch the full uncut 3-hour interview that Dale and I did, including the complete Skywatch, plus that video where Dale taught the entire protocol for calling in UFOs. It's all available on our Patreon right now, which you can find at soweird.com or the link in the description. And if you haven't seen episode 1 yet, the Phoenix Light Stalk, you're gonna wanna watch that next. Because not only is it the most famous yet least talked about mass UFO sighting in modern history, but for the first time ever, we fully unpack what actually happened on March 13th, 1997, the top secret government cover-up, and the real-life Men in Black who swooped into Phoenix to erase the evidence. And you can watch the entire documentary right here. This is the stuff they don't want you to know.